What if I told you that America's most powerful union boss walked into a restaurant parking lot in 1975 and vanished without a single trace? What if I told you the FBI has spent nearly 50 years searching for his body in cement foundations, under football stadiums, and inside industrial shredders? What if I told you that the people who made him disappear had connections so deep in government and organized crime that the truth might never be revealed? This is the story of Jimmy Hoffa, the man who knew too much, the man who threatened the wrong people, the man who disappeared so completely that even his grave remains a mystery half a century later. Welcome to the Secret Chronicles. I'm your host, and today we're investigating one of America's most infamous unsolved mysteries, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, a case that involves the mob, the FBI, corrupt politicians, and a conspiracy so vast that discovering the truth could expose secrets the government still wants buried. This isn't just about a missing person. This is about power, betrayal, and how dangerous it becomes when you know too much about the wrong people. We're breaking this investigation into 7 chapters, each revealing darker truths about the day America's most powerful labor leader vanished. Let's begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Man Who Built an Empire. James Riddle Hoffa was born on February 14, 1913, in Brazil, Indiana. His father died when he was 7, forcing his family into poverty during the Great Depression. Young Jimmy dropped out of school at 14 to help support his mother and siblings, taking whatever work he could find. By the 1930s, Hoffa was working as a warehouse laborer in Detroit, loading and unloading freight for poverty wages in dangerous conditions. He saw how workers were exploited, abused, and discarded when they got injured or sick. That's when he discovered his calling. In 1932, at just 19 years old, Hoffa organized his first labor strike. He and his co-workers at the Kroger grocery warehouse refused to unload a shipment of strawberries that would spoil in the summer heat. They knew management would have to negotiate. The strike worked. Hoffa realized the power of organized labor. Over the next 2 decades, Hoffa rose through the ranks of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, the union representing truck drivers, warehouse workers, and transportation employees across America. He was a natural organizer, a brilliant negotiator, and absolutely fearless when confronting management or rival unions. By 1957, Hoffa became the president of the Teamsters, leading what was then the largest and most powerful labor union in the United States. Under his leadership, the Teamsters grew to over 2 million members. He negotiated groundbreaking contracts that gave workers better wages, health insurance, and pension benefits that transformed working-class American life. Hoffa became a household name. He appeared on magazine covers. He debated senators on television. He had the power to shut down entire industries with a single phone call authorizing a strike. Trucking companies, shipping firms, and manufacturers feared him because he controlled the workers who moved goods across America. But that kind of power comes with a price, and Hoffa was about to learn just how high that price could be. Because the empire he built wasn't just supported by union members and legitimate labor organizing. Hoffa had made deals with people who operated outside the law, people who didn't negotiate with words, people who made problems disappear permanently. Chapter 2. The Enemies He Made Along the Way. As Hoffa's power grew, so did his connections to organized crime. To expand the Teamsters and defeat rival unions, Hoffa formed alliances with mob families across the country. The Detroit Partnership, the Chicago Outfit, the New Jersey crime families. They helped him intimidate opponents, rig union elections, and control labor disputes. In exchange, Hoffa gave the mob access to the Teamsters Pension Fund, a massive pool of money worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Mob-connected businesses received loans they never repaid. Casinos in Las Vegas were built with Teamsters pension money. The mob used the fund like their personal bank, and Hoffa looked the other way because it kept them happy and kept him in power. But this arrangement attracted dangerous attention. By the early 1960s, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy launched a personal crusade to destroy Hoffa and break the Teamsters' connection to organized crime. Kennedy saw Hoffa as corrupt, dangerous, and a threat to American democracy. The Senate held hearings where Kennedy personally questioned Hoffa about union corruption, mob connections, and financial crimes. The exchanges were brutal. Kennedy called Hoffa a thug. Hoffa called Kennedy a spoiled rich kid who'd never worked a real job in his life. The hatred between them was visceral and personal. The federal government launched investigation after investigation, trying to find evidence to convict Hoffa of something, anything that would put him in prison and break his power over the Teamsters. They wiretapped his phones. They followed him constantly. They pressured his associates to testify against him. In 1964, federal prosecutors finally succeeded. Hoffa was convicted of jury tampering and fraud related to loans from the Teamsters Pension Fund. He was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison. But even from behind bars, Hoffa continued running the Teamsters through loyal lieutenants. He refused to resign his presidency. He fought his conviction through appeals, and he made it clear that the moment he got out, he would reclaim his throne. In 1971, President Richard Nixon commuted Hoffa's sentence under one condition. Hoffa could not participate in union activities until 1980. Nixon's decision was controversial, possibly influenced by the Teamsters' support for his re-election campaign. Hoffa was released from prison in December 1971. But the restriction on union activity drove him crazy. The Teamsters were his life, his identity, his power. Watching from the sidelines while his former protege Frank Fitzsimmons ran the union was unbearable. By 1975, Hoffa was openly working to overturn the restriction on his union involvement. He was filing lawsuits, making public statements, and meeting with union members who wanted him back. He was also threatening to expose mob corruption if certain people didn't support his return to power. That's when Jimmy Hoffa made his final fatal mistake. He forgot that the people who helped him rise to power were the same people who would kill him if he became a problem. And in the summer of 1975, Jimmy Hoffa became a very big problem for very dangerous people. Chapter 3. July 30th, 1975, the day he disappeared. July 30th, 1975. A hot Wednesday afternoon in Detroit, Michigan. Jimmy Hoffa, now 62 years old, was staying at his summer home in Lake Orion, about 40 miles north of Detroit. He had been working tirelessly to get the restriction on his union activities lifted and was planning a major comeback. That morning, Hoffa made several phone calls arranging a meeting for later that day. He told his wife Josephine he was meeting Anthony Provenzano, a Teamsters official from New Jersey with deep connections to the Genovese crime family, and Anthony Giacalone, a Detroit mob captain. The meeting was supposedly to settle old disputes and discuss Hoffa's potential return to union leadership. Provenzano and Hoffa had been feuding for years, including a physical altercation when they were both in prison together. Hoffa believed he could negotiate peace and secure mob support for his comeback. Around 2:00 p.m., Hoffa drove his wife's 1974 Pontiac Granville to the Matches Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, an upscale suburb of Detroit. It was a public location, the kind of place where mob figures often held meetings in plain sight. Hoffa arrived early, around 2:15 p.m. He waited in the parking lot. The restaurant wasn't even open for dinner yet, but Hoffa expected his associates would arrive soon. At 2:30 p.m., Hoffa called his wife from a payphone at the restaurant, telling her that the men he was supposed to meet hadn't shown up yet. He sounded annoyed, but not concerned. He said he'd wait a bit longer and would be home by 4 p.m. for dinner. That was the last time anyone who cared about Jimmy Hoffa heard his voice. What happened in the next hour remains one of the greatest mysteries in American crime history. Multiple witnesses later reported seeing Hoffa in the parking lot around 2:45 p.m. He appeared to be talking to someone, then voluntarily got into a car. The car drove away. Jimmy Hoffa was never seen again. When Hoffa didn't come home for dinner, Josephine grew worried. She called their son James P. Hoffa, who drove to the restaurant around 7:30 p.m. He found his father's Pontiac still parked in the lot, unlocked, with no signs of struggle. The family immediately reported him missing. Within hours, the FBI and Detroit police launched an investigation that would become one of the longest and most expensive missing persons cases in American history. But here's what makes this disappearance so chilling. The people Hoffa was supposed to meet all had perfect alibis. Anthony Provenzano was in New Jersey that day, documented at his Teamsters local office. Anthony Giacalone was at a nearby athletic club getting a massage, with witnesses confirming his presence. The mob had planned this operation so carefully that the men Hoffa came to meet were never anywhere near Detroit. So who did Hoffa get into that car with? And where did they take him? The answers to those questions would require investigators to dive deep into the violent, secretive world of organized crime. And what they discovered was far more disturbing than a simple murder. Chapter 4: The Mob Connection. They tried to hide. The FBI quickly determined that Hoffa's disappearance was almost certainly a mob hit, carefully planned and executed by multiple crime families working together. But proving it and finding the body would be nearly impossible. Investigators learned that several mob-connected individuals were seen in the area around the time Hoffa disappeared. Chucky O'Brien, Hoffa's foster son and a Teamsters official with mob ties, was spotted driving a car that day. When questioned, O'Brien denied any involvement, but his alibi was weak and kept changing. Charles Allen, a former FBI informant, later testified that he overheard mob figures discussing the Hoffa hit. According to Allen, Hoffa was picked up by people he trusted, driven to a nearby house, and murdered within an hour of leaving the restaurant. His body was then disposed of so thoroughly that it would never be recovered. The most credible theory about what happened comes from multiple mob informants who have since died. According to their accounts, Hoffa was lured to the meeting under false pretenses. When he got into the car, thinking he was being taken to another location to meet with mob bosses, he was instead driven to a house in Detroit where he was executed. Some informants claim Hoffa was shot in the back of the head and killed instantly. Others suggest he was strangled. The exact method varies depending on who's telling the story, but the outcome is always the same. Jimmy Hoffa died on July 30, 1975, murdered by the same mob associates he'd worked with for decades. But here's where the conspiracy gets even darker. The FBI has long suspected that Hoffa's murder wasn't just about union control or settling old grudges. It was about silencing him before he could reveal secrets that would expose mob infiltration of American labor unions, connections to corrupt politicians, and financial crimes involving billions of dollars. Hoffa had been making threats in the months before his disappearance. He told people that if certain mob figures didn't support his return to power, he would cooperate with federal investigators and expose everything he knew about mob control of the Teamsters Pension Fund, payoffs to politicians, and connections between organized crime and legitimate businesses. For men like Provenzano, Giacalone, and their bosses in various crime families, Jimmy Hoffa had become a liability. He knew too much. He was too unpredictable. And he was threatening to burn down an empire they'd spent decades building, so they made him disappear. Not just killing him, but ensuring his body would never be found, sending a message to anyone else who might consider cooperating with law enforcement. Betray us, and you don't just die. You cease to exist. Chapter 5: The Search That Found Nothing. The investigation into Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance became one of the most extensive and expensive in FBI history. Over nearly 50 years, federal agents have followed thousands of leads, conducted dozens of excavations, and interviewed hundreds of witnesses. They found exactly nothing. In the immediate aftermath of Hoffa's disappearance, the FBI searched properties connected to mob figures across Michigan, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. They excavated fields, drained ponds, and dug up concrete foundations. Every search came up empty. One of the most famous theories involved Giant Stadium in New Jersey, which was under construction in 1975. Rumors spread that Hoffa's body had been buried in concrete under the stadium's foundation. The theory seemed plausible. There were mob connections to the construction company, but ground-penetrating radar searches in 2010 found nothing. In 2003, the FBI received a tip that Hoffa was buried under a backyard pool at a home in Hampton Township, Michigan. They excavated the entire property. No body. In 2006, investigators received information that Hoffa had been buried on a horse farm in Michigan. They dug up the property with heavy machinery. Nothing. In 2013, soil samples were taken from underneath a driveway in suburban Detroit based on another informant tip. The soil analysis revealed no evidence of human remains. Each failed search generated new headlines and revived public interest in the case, but brought investigators no closer to solving it. The problem is simple. Without a body, there's no crime scene. Without a crime scene, there's no physical evidence. Without physical evidence, there's no way to prosecute anyone for Hoffa's murder, even if investigators know exactly who did it. And here's what makes this case even more frustrating for law enforcement. Multiple mob informants and former associates have come forward over the decades, claiming to have inside knowledge about what happened to Hoffa. The problem is, they all tell slightly different stories. Some say Hoffa was buried in a New Jersey landfill that was later covered with tons of garbage and sealed. Others claim his body was put through an industrial shredder at a Detroit metal processing plant, reducing him to fragments that were disposed of as scrap. Another theory suggests he was placed in a 55-gallon drum, filled with cement, and dropped in the Great Lakes. The most disturbing theory comes from a former mob enforcer who claimed that Hoffa's body was taken to a mob-connected funeral home, placed in a casket with another recently deceased person, and cremated along with that body. If true, Hoffa literally went up in smoke, leaving no physical evidence behind. Every theory sounds plausible. Every theory has some supporting evidence from informants or circumstantial facts, but none have been conclusively proven. It's as if the mob created multiple disposal stories deliberately, ensuring that even if someone talked, investigators would waste resources chasing false leads while the real burial site remained hidden. Chapter 6: The Suspects Who All Had Alibis. Over the decades, the FBI has identified several key suspects in Hoffa's murder. The problem? They all had carefully constructed alibis, and most are now dead, taking their secrets to the grave. Anthony Provenzano, the New Jersey Teamsters official Hoffa was supposed to meet, was the prime suspect for years. Provenzano had a violent hatred for Hoffa dating back to their time in prison together. He also had the mob connections and motive to order a hit. But Provenzano was documented to be in New Jersey on July 30th, 1975, with multiple witnesses placing him far from Detroit. He died in 1988, never charged in Hoffa's disappearance. Anthony Giacalone, the Detroit mob captain, was another prime suspect. Giacalone had the local connections to arrange the hit and was known to be involved in disposing of bodies for the Detroit Partnership crime family. But like Provenzano, Giacalone had a solid alibi, documented at an athletic club at the time Hoffa disappeared. He died in 1993, maintaining his innocence. Chucky O'Brien, Hoffa's foster son, is perhaps the most tragic figure in this story. Multiple witnesses and informants have claimed O'Brien was the person who picked up Hoffa and drove him to his death, possibly without knowing what was about to happen. O'Brien has denied involvement for nearly 50 years, but his shifting alibis and mob connections have kept him under suspicion. He died in 2020, still claiming innocence. Frank Sheeran, a Teamsters official and mob enforcer, made a deathbed confession in 2003 that he was the triggerman who shot Hoffa. His story became the basis for the movie The Irishman. Sheeran claimed he was driven to a Detroit house where Hoffa was waiting, shot him twice in the back of the head, and left while others disposed of the body. But investigators found problems with Sheeran's account, including timeline issues and lack of physical evidence supporting his claims. The truth is, Hoffa's murder was likely planned and executed by multiple people across several crime families, each playing a small role so that no single person knew the entire plan. It's a classic mob strategy. Compartmentalize the operation so that even if someone gets caught or decides to talk, they can only implicate themselves and maybe one or two others, never the entire conspiracy. And here's the most frustrating part for investigators. The people who definitely know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa are almost all dead now. Provenzano, Giacalone, Sheeran, and dozens of other mob figures who were active in 1975 are gone. The few who remain alive are elderly, some with dementia, others simply refusing to talk. The FBI officially declared Hoffa legally dead in 1982, 7 years after his disappearance. But the investigation technically remains open. Every few years, a new tip comes in, a new theory emerges, and investigators take another look. But at this point, after nearly 50 years, finding Hoffa's remains seems almost impossible. Chapter 7: The Truth They're Still Covering Up. So why does Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance still matter nearly 50 years later? Why do we care about finding the body of a man who's been legally dead for over 40 years? Because this case represents something much bigger than one man's murder. It's about the corruption that infected American labor unions, the mob's infiltration of legitimate business, and the uncomfortable truth that organized crime operated with virtual impunity for decades because they had connections to law enforcement, politicians, and powerful business interests. Finding Hoffa's body would mean prosecuting someone for his murder, prosecuting someone for his murder would mean exposing the entire conspiracy. Who ordered it? Who carried it out? Who helped cover it up? And what secrets Hoffa knew that made him dangerous enough to kill? Think about what Hoffa could have revealed if he'd decided to cooperate with federal investigators. He knew how the mob controlled Teamsters elections. He knew which politicians received illegal campaign contributions from union pension funds. He knew about mob ownership stakes in Vegas casinos, construction companies, and trucking firms. He knew about murders, extortion, fraud, and corruption spanning decades. That kind of knowledge made him the most dangerous man in America to certain people. And those people made sure he would never get the chance to talk. But here's what really disturbs investigators who've worked this case. In the years following Hoffa's disappearance, several other mob associates who had knowledge about what happened also disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. It's as if someone was systematically eliminating anyone who could connect the dots. The conspiracy didn't end with Hoffa's murder. It continued for years afterward, silencing witnesses, destroying evidence, and ensuring that the truth would remain buried forever. Today, the Teamsters Union has largely cleaned up its act, purging mob influence and operating as a legitimate labor organization. But the legacy of the corruption that flourished under Hoffa's leadership still haunts American labor unions, giving ammunition to anti-union politicians and undermining trust in organized labor. Jimmy Hoffa built an empire that gave millions of workers better lives, better wages, and dignity in their labor. But he built that empire with the help of violent criminals. And when he became a liability to those criminals, they erased him from existence. The most chilling aspect of this case? It worked. Nearly 50 years later, nobody has been prosecuted for Hoffa's murder. The people responsible got away with it completely. They proved that if you have enough power, enough connections, and enough ruthlessness, you can make someone disappear so thoroughly that even a massive federal investigation spanning decades can't find any trace of them. So what do you think happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Is his body buried under concrete somewhere, waiting to be discovered by future construction? Was he dissolved in acid or fed through an industrial shredder? Or is he lying in an anonymous grave in a cemetery, buried with someone else, never to be identified? Subscribe to the Secret Chronicles as we continue investigating the mysteries that law enforcement can't or won't solve. Leave your theories about Hoffa's fate in the comments below. And remember, in a world where power corrupts absolutely, the most dangerous thing you can possess isn't money or influence. It's knowledge about the people who really run things. Jimmy Hoffa learned that lesson the hard way. He knew too much. He threatened the wrong people. And on July 30th, 1975, he paid the ultimate price for that mistake. His body may never be found, but his story serves as a permanent warning. Some secrets are worth killing for, and some secrets stay buried forever.